On this podcast, we talk about the books, both old and new, that are worth putting on your to-be-read list. I'll include the back cover synopsis, content warnings, as well as my pro and con list. To avoid any spoilers, head over to my Instagram at enjoylifewithme.angela. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these books. Let's jump in for the day. Today we're going to be talking about a nonfiction book titled The Little Book of Hygge, Danish Secrets to Happy Living by Meik, Wiking. The back cover says, the Danes are famously the happiest people in the world, and Hygge is a cornerstone of their way of life. Hygge loosely translates as a sense of comfort, togetherness, and well-being. You know Hygge when you feel it. It is when you're cuddled up on a sofa with a loved one, or sharing comfort food with your closest friends. It is those crisp blue mornings when the light through your window is just right. It is about gratitude and savoring the simple pleasures in life. In short, it is the pursuit of everyday happiness. Now, as far as I know, there was no trigger warnings or anything that I saw with that, but there was language once. And today, you don't get just my opinion, you get to have my very sweet husband come and talk to me about this book because I made him read it too.
Hello, everyone.
So we're going to do it a little different because it's a nonfiction. We're just going to kind of walk through from the beginning, kind of chapter by chapter, what our thoughts are, concepts, and then I have a question at the end because clearly I need to know.
All right, let's do it.
So the first chapter they talked about was lighting and the importance of having candles and dim light throughout, where I feel like here in America we have the big bright lights in the middle of the room, like the one over our head right now.
Yeah, but at least like the one over our head is still a softer light, which quite frankly, I'm a fan of the kind of hyper sterile light, which is kind of anti-Hygge. Like I like the bright, big, 50,000 lumen light. Obviously that's exaggerated, but those big, really bright lights. That's what I want above my head.
I want that during the day when I'm like doing things, but if I'm trying to have like a Hygge moment, then yeah, a bunch of little lamps around the room or a candle is way more my speed.
And I can see that. I'm like, if I wanted to just sit and read a book, I think the giant sterile lighting from a one giant light is probably not what I would choose.
Right, and you like sitting in front of the fireplace too, or like when we're camping, like in front of the fire.
Yes, that is true.
If you're trying to go for Hygge, the softer, dimmer, more spread out.
More
warm,
natural warm light.
Warm light, yeah.
Yes.
Warm is kind of what I was thinking. I did think it was funny. I'm going to read this quote from the book. It's back from when they were designing light fixtures, and the guy said, "It doesn't take money to light a room correctly, but it does take culture, and human beings are like children. As soon as they get a new toy, they throw away the culture." Because the guy who was doing it, he grew up with the oil lamps, and so to go to electricity, everyone was excited and everything was going to be super bright all the time. They weren't sitting around, the fireplace. They weren't sitting around the table with a lamp. Like, they had electricity now, and so I felt like it was very fitting for him to say that. Well, then the next chapter is talking about Hygge and like the coziness, the authenticity, the warmth, the togetherness. So he has a manifesto, basically, and it lists the different parts of Hygge.
Probably one of my favorite parts of that, something that applied to me most heavily, is the idea of imagining the moment you're in is as good as it gets. Because so often, especially in kind of the American culture, we are plagued by FOMO constantly. We're always looking at, but if I'm doing this, then I'm not doing that other thing, and that other thing might be better. And I mean, especially like I play video games quite extensively, and there's always a thing that I am not doing if I'm not playing video games. And so in the back of my mind, there's always that little voice saying, well, if you're not doing it, you're missing out on whatever the, reward is for playing the video game more. It's been fairly recently that I've started taking that time and going, you know what, who cares? And letting myself be more in the moment and present. And it's been an interesting change, and a lot of things in video games have fallen by the wayside, but overall I haven't missed them at all. I think as a culture we need to really think about that one and decide if we are focusing too much on what could be rather than what is,
and what you're doing in your own online world rather than what's going on in the same room.
Yeah, I don't need to save a fictional world for the 50th time.
I mean, they need saving though.
Yes, there are so many quests that have been left unquested.
But the kids really liked playing Candyland tonight. Yes. So I like the part where they said that our language reflects our world because we give names to things that we see and things that matter. And our words shape our actions. And so they actually have the word hygge, where it's like we don't have we have coziness and things like that.
We don't have something that really encompasses all of that whole concept into one word.
Right. And so I was like, I like that you're like, it's important to us and we have a word for it because it's important, and the things we see and matter to us. Like, I guess when you have a word for it, it matters to you and you are able to apply it, I guess is what I'm saying. And I like that. The next chapter is the togetherness part, where they talk about oxytocin is the love hormone, which we've all heard about, and it helps with the socialism that they have there that seems to be working for them, at least to some extent. They have a higher trust level as a whole mentality of hygge and everyone's.
Yeah, I think that's an important key concept of that is it's not you can't have a socialist society in a individualistic society, which is why I don't think that it really works here as much as people want it to. I think we are too individualistic. So any attempt at socialism is going to end in disaster because people aren't going to say, how can we help each other? It's how can you help me?
Right. Where, because he says all of the parents leave early so that they can pick up their kids. And there's no overtime. Like, you never work overtime there. Where it's like, that doesn't work here. Because they're worried about getting home to be with their families and to do these, hygge nights with their friends. And that's important to them as a society. Where here, if you aren't working overtime, you're a problem. If you leave early to pick up your kids from school, they're like, what is wrong with you? Like, that's not a thing here. And so their value on individual happiness and the family in general, because they're making sure the parents are there so that they are the biggest influence in their child's lives, so that the next generation is being raised to care about those things.
Right.
So I feel like socialism over there works better because of it. So these social gatherings, I like that they talk about how introversion isn't shyness. Like, we're not shy, because I can be very loud and obnoxious. But the need and want for social time is still there. It's just a lot of stimuli is draining. So if you go to an event with, 700 people,
or 12.
Or 12. Was last weekend draining?
It was draining.
It's exhausting. So they had that kind of the perfect number for hygge groups. They say it's like 3 to 4 people. So yeah, I like that. Smaller numbers, and so I feel like it's accessible to the introverts. It's a good happy medium where we're getting out and socializing, because having a network is important, and having people that you can be authentic with is important. But it's not draining in the, okay, we've been here for an hour and I need to leave and go stare at a wall. Then it moves on to food and drinks, which is lovely. So it talked about you want kind of more rustic bakes and hot drinks. And if you've watched the Great British Baking Show, you'll know what a lot of the recipes are. So it's more European cooking.
See, and I'm if you give me a cake, I'm like, cool cake, But for me, it's ice cream hands down. And I don't really, I mean, hot chocolate is another one of those things where I'm like, it's good, I guess, but it's not, I'm not going out of my way, but I will go out of my way for ice cream. And I would love to sit with a blanket and a book or a TV show and just chill next to my amazing, beautiful wife with a bowl full of ice cream. That is what I want.
Right, but you also don't like drinking warm things. So
Story.
that's just a personal preference. But it's like the warmth of like being snuggled in, I think is what they were going with. Because for me, a warm drink is definitely that way. Even I've been drinking things all summer that are warm. That has nothing to do with it. But also, I didn't use the recipe in the book, but the Danish rice pudding recipe that I've tweaked to perfection since this book is amazing. And if you want it, message me and I will send you the recipe because it's good, huh, dear?
Yes, it's very good.
And I don't think it's necessarily cakes and such. It's just saying rustic things. So like meat and potatoes kind of. And that's more up your alley than I guess dessert would be.
True story.
Because he said in the book, the longer it takes to prep, the more hygge it is.
Yeah, which is kind of an interesting concept to me because longer to prep doesn't necessarily mean better, but it does. I guess it kind of almost implies an amount of care that goes into making something. So I mean, it could even taste kind of not that great, but you know that whoever made it, even if it's you, if you made it, you put time and effort and passion into it. You know, no one's gonna spend 8 hours roasting or smoking a roast for for no reason or for something to just be thrown together. It takes time and planning and effort.
Also, I think it implies time together. Because I mean, while you probably start, the roast or whatever before everyone gets there, like people are showing up and you're hanging out and talking about your days and prepping.
And then you have like the Brazilian barbecue thing where you roast the meat and you're slowly taking small pieces off as the night goes on, and you just sit and chat for hours while you eat extremely slowly.
That is true. After that, we move on to clothing, and I could totally get down with their style of clothing.
And I could not care less.
Black layers, isn't that totally what you wear? It's black.
I wear whatever is comfortable regardless of what it looks like or feels like. It just needs to fit.
Whatever's on top of the stack.
Yeah, whatever is on top of the stack.
I don't know, I liked the comfy layers, the blacks. He said they got real crazy and would do gray sometimes. And I feel like that's the vast majority of my wardrobe is black and gray. And I always have like a cardigan or something too. So I was like, I feel like I'm halfway there. I'm not doing the woolen socks though. Those are terrible.
Yeah, itchy and way too hot.
Right?
Of course, I mean we don't live in Denmark. It's not
In
it's
fairness,
not nearly as cold here as it is there.
No, I think it's just different cold because it's not humid here.
Right.
And in fairness, the humid cold, it doesn't matter what you wear, you're just always cold. It's terrible. Then they talk about the house and having a home that's hygge. So having like a comfy spot that you can like sit and read, having a fireplace. We don't, but
we're not rich enough for a fireplace. Them's for fancy people.
Or people without children, because let's get real. So kind of wood furnishings, which we both like anyways. The nature, like the indoor plants. I would do that, but I just always feel like the indoor plants always end up with like the plant flies. And so if someone out there wants to explain to me how to have an indoor plant that doesn't end up with plant flies all over the entire house driving me nuts, that'd be great. Love to know that. I like the idea of having a indoor plant. I feel like it definitely adds to the space. They'd also have more ceramic things, which I'm all for. We have stoneware plates. I have my favorite mugs. So I mean, I think we're already there on that one. Books. Lots of books, huh, dear?
Yes.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Raising little readers because they're gonna like books too.
Yes.
So tactile stuff, soft blankets, which we definitely have.
In large supply.
Yep. The one I don't feel like I am with as much as the vintage book.
Yeah.
I tend to be a little more modern, especially in the kitchen I like my clean lines and such, not necessarily the vintage.
Well, I feel like honestly, the kitchen is almost like a whole different animal.
So I feel like finding a balance in that is important.
Yeah.
And then they talk about having hygge outside the home, and I think this is where it kind of gets a little more tricky. I feel like going out, like you said, with our friends to a restaurant that had dimmer lighting in general, just the two couples, that was worked. Maybe doing something more casual outside with a group. He talked about walking around trying to find a restaurant that had hygge lighting. I don't feel like that's something you can do here.
But I mean, you have certain ones where you're like, Olive Garden always has the low level lighting, but I mean, it's loud
Yes, it
and,
is.
and crowded usually, and so
Yes.
that takes away from that environment. But it's if you're going for lighting, they always have really low lighting.
I feel like you can make it work. It's just not as common here unless you're like, I'm going to a romantic restaurant kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're not doing casual.
Right.
Which might be why my book club really enjoys the coffee shop we go to each month, is because like it does have couches and a fireplace. Like it's a little electric one. It's not real flames, but it looks nice, and they've got comfy couches, and we all just sit there. They are out there. I guess you just have to look for them. But like we were talking about, office, really, I mean, you can do certain things for your office, I guess, but not a whole ton. I mean, they were talking about making it homey as best you can.
And occasionally I'll cook for the guys at the shop. And that usually produces a really fun afternoon where we all kind of just chill and talk, forms that space even without having all the extra things of hygge. It's just it brings a lot more levity and coziness to the office.
Right. So, like, he suggested potlucks. He suggested a garden, and I'm not entirely sure that's feasible. But, like, having a plant, I mean, he was going, I think, more for, like, the fact that plants and taking care of them pull for stress, I guess. Something to look forward to in the mornings. It kind of helps motivate you to get there, gives you kind of a slow start to the workday. Like something easy. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go in and water the plant. That is easy to do.
Right.
Whereas just like, I'm going to go in and deal with, the first fire email.
Yeah.
Like that's not a chill way to start the day. So having something like simple, relaxing, easy to start the day with, I can see the benefit of that. Mm-hmm. But they talked about, I feel like this would work for a lot of the people I work for, not in my cubicle, but a lot of the people I work for that have the offices, they have couches so that they can read their documents on the couch, and then they can do their work at the computer, and just kind of having compartmentalized areas of their office can help with like moving around and like kind of breaking up the day a little bit, because the guy said in the book that he does his interviews on the couch. It's just more relaxed and authentic. Yeah. I feel like I've said that word like 20 times this time, but like that was one of the things I really liked from this book.
Right.
And he did say, if you have a cubicle, you need to give it some sort of life, like something to make you smile, whether it's a picture or a candle, a reason to be there, because you're there for hours and hours and hours. You don't want to be there in misery. So I liked this, and I feel like it kind of rolls into later chapters where they specify summer and Christmas, but having hygge all year round, kind of having built-in weekend getaways, ski trips, weekends to the cabin, whatever it is. I feel like getting out and hiking, building fires, doing marshmallows, having built-in small hygge things is good for mental health. To have movie nights, even if it's just us and the kids. And I did also like how when they were talking about summer, where it wasn't warm drinks necessarily, it was like, oh, we always have like strawberries. Specifically, I feel like your smell and taste are very strong nostalgic senses, and so every summer we have strawberries. So when you're having strawberries that summer with your friend, it's like oh, yeah, we go picking every summer with this group of people, and it makes the time more special.
And also, like, nothing makes you live in the moment quite as much as picking fruit. I don't know what it is. And as a kid, I absolutely hated it because my mother had currant bushes, and she would hand me a small, tiny, small bucket and say, as soon as this is full, you'll be done. And a currant is the size of a pea, and it only takes 10 million to fill up that bucket. I was there for most of the day, picking those tiny pieces of fruit. But I was focused on what I was doing and how I was going, which as a kid, is awful. But as an adult, it allows you to slow down and actually take a breath. In our culture, we find ourselves bored when we do that, but that's because we're trying to find the next thing to occupy and entertain our brains. And taking a moment away from that is extremely therapeutic.
Being bored is good for us.
Being bored is good for you.
So they talked about barbecues, picnics, bonfires, farmers markets. They did talk about biking a lot.
Is harder around here. There are places that we could bike, but it is harder. But
Yeah.
it's one of those things where, like, biking causes happiness. Well, yeah, obviously. Like, if you get out and you move your body, it's been proven 1,000 times over that you'll be happier.
Exercise is good for you. Weird.
Is good. Yeah. Huh. What a novel idea. They've been doing it for 1,000 years, and now we know.
Half the year here is 3 feet of snow.
Yeah.
Not conducive to biking conditions.
Nope.
It's also, hilly.
Mm-hmm.
We're not in the mountains, but it ain't flat either. Biking, great idea if you want to do like mountain biking, I guess. But yeah, so they talked about that. They also talked about Christmas hygge. If you don't have hygge at Christmas, you done messed up.
This is probably my favorite part of the whole book. And I love Christmas. Christmas is really important. But this is where we actually get into the hygge prep, which I think is something that we often overlook when we're looking for happiness. Because he talks about how it's so incredibly important and honestly essential. It's not an option of whether or not Christmas will be hygge. It has to be. And they do so many things to make sure that it is. So it's planned happiness. And like, I often find myself sitting around going, man, why can't I just be happy? But I don't actually do anything about it. I'm not riding a bike or exercising or eating right or getting enough sleep or finding ways to enjoy my job, or like I'm actively not doing the things that make me happy. But they have taken the time to plan out and say, this is what will make this the best experience, and then they work for it. And like, if we did that, if I did that, then I know I could be a much happier person. So planned happiness, and I guess happiness is intentional happiness.
A choice mindset.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like overall Hygge is a mindset that thankfully they have as the whole community expectation as well. That makes it possible, but it's a word that they have adapted and created to mean something, and so that they are choosing it intentionally. They're choosing the lighting and the food and the whatever. I mean, even here in the US, like, we can say the Christmas hustle and bustle, like, it's insanity, like.
Yeah.
And the reason hygge's so important, especially at that point, is because it has to stand in contrast to the craziness, so that when you sit down with your family for that meal that you have planned, it's like extra special because you just did extra work. And I think maybe that's why the food taking longer, it's like you've put in the extra work so that when you relax, it's more fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you have built-in traditions around Christmas whereas like throughout the rest of the year, not so much.
Mhm.
At least for us. It's like there might be like that one summer spot you always go to, or that one hike you like every year, but it's not like with Christmas. It's like a ton of
Yeah,
traditions.
it's steeped in tradition. Like
Yeah.
it's the and it also, as far coming back to lighting, Christmas is the one time where I'm like, yes, I want all the lights turned off except the Christmas tree, and I want to sit on the couch and just stare at the Christmas tree.
Absolutely.
The low light, cozy Christmas spirit moments.
Right. See, lighting, low lighting. It's good. So yeah, they have decorations. Like they have additional decorations. They have a candle specifically, like an Advent candle that you burn down so much every day. Advent activities, like I feel like they put so much more effort into it. And maybe that's, why the last couple of years I've said, like, okay, like Christmas just kind of came and went, and I'm like, I feel like I missed it almost. Because it's like I was working so much to get like the presents and the decorations and all the things that I didn't take the time to enjoy the Hygge moments.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe incorporating those kind of traditions, not specifically those traditions, but traditions in general, kind of throughout the year, right, I think is important. I feel like that's also why they can be the happiest people on earth, even though, like, I think he said 180, I don't remember, but it was like 180 days a year it's raining, and they get like 7 or 8 hours of light during the day. Like, that's just mind-boggling to have so little sunlight. I love the rain. You also need some sunshine.
Yes.
To, vitamin D necessities. They have these traditions to look forward to. They have intentional plans, but they are still able to be intentionally happy because it's a mindset, it's a choice throughout the year, even though their weather should make them the most depressed people, I feel like.
Yeah.
And that's coming from someone who likes the cloudy and rainy.
Mm-hmm. Like, this is going to be a really long podcast. Who's going to sit all the way to the end? This is going to be the treasure of sitting through to the end.
So whoever sits through and listens to the end will give you an Amazon gift card. How's that?
There you go.
I'll give you 10 bonus entries into the giveaway this month. That should guarantee it, right? How are we going to apply it to us? Kind of the applicable part of the book. Because, thankfully, it's actually a really short book. If you listen on the library app, we had it on Libby, and it's like 3 hours. Mm-hmm. It's really short. The paper copy I actually really liked. I will say this. Author read the book, was the narrator, which is always the best thing ever. I love when the author does it. But the paperback that we have is been adjusted to US measurements, where the audiobook was metric. And they also said different words like, jumpers instead of, cardigans or jackets. And I can't remember what the word they used for croquet was, but it's a different game. And so it's like, there was different things like that. But it's a short book and it's great. But unless you actually start like applying it, it's, a waste of 3 hours.
Yeah. But there's so much to apply if you actually start looking into it. But it's stuff that's not revolutionary, I guess, is one of my things when I'm reading this book. I'm like, there's nothing here that's necessarily revolutionary. It's stuff we all really inherently know. Mm-hmm. And like, yes, you should, intentionally work towards happiness. Yes, you should try to, exercise and give your body a fighting chance at being happy. Give yourself the oxytocin and the serotonin and all of those happy chemicals that are released when you do all the things that you should be doing. And so that's my thing. It's like, if this book is not going to blow your mind, but it's just one more voice urging you to do what you know you should do.
Right. And I feel like he breaks it down into small enough pieces that you can. So it's like, okay, great. You go light a candle in the kitchen and you turn off like the overhead light. Or it's like, okay, this year we're getting into the holidays. It might be 90 degrees outside, but I am adamant that it is fall. Gosh dang it, it is September. It is the end of September. The weather just won't get with the program. But it's just like we're getting into the holidays. Are we going to intentionally plan some double dates with friends? Are we going to intentionally plan, get-togethers with family? Are we like going to do traditions with the kids and be in the moment? Like you said, are you present? Are the screens off? Are you just there for it?
Mm-hmm. And that's something that's weighed heavily on me for a while. So it's like I'm not 100% in a moment pretty much ever. I'm always thinking of what's coming next. What do I need to do at work? What do I want to do on my game? What do I want to do with the kids? What am I cooking for dinner? I'm like, my brain is always in the future. And like, I know I need to slow it down and just let it be.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of this is mindset work. Because like you said, it's nothing new. We know that taking care of our bodies, good. Having social support and a network that you can rely on, good. And it's just like, are you going to intentionally work towards doing those things? I guess the question I have at the end is, how do you light all these candles that they light without burning the house down?
The book mentions that 31% of people say that they light at least 5 candles, if not more. I'm like, that's a lot of candles. And I've never been there, but I'm guessing their houses aren't super huge, and they have everything is made of wood
and vintage.
It's all old wood. Gotta be careful,
right? Not everything here is old wood. Well, this house is,
yes,
but in general, America isn't necessarily old wood. How do you do that? Because like they have it in like their classrooms and their offices and everything, and I was just like, how? In fairness, our kids are always trying to blow out the candles that I light.
Well, we've conditioned them. Happy birthday. It's not a thing where you're like, oh, just leave it lit.
So I have the question for the how do you not burn down the house with the candles? Got the how do you not end up with bugs with plants in the house? I think those were the only 2 questions I had for this one. Yeah.
Yep.
And if you stay to the end, let me know and I'll give you 10 extra entries into the giveaway this month. So there you go. Yep. Thanks for listening so long. And as always, happy reading. We'll talk to you soon.